I'm really excited to be talking to my friend Ben. We got to see each other. We've seen each other before, but I got to see you for the first time in a long time at that church conference just a few weeks ago. Loved your talk, and I'm like, I want to make sure our listeners hear this idea that you have, because I think it's remarkable, and I think it could be such a great tool for pastors and honestly all speakers. As you were giving the talk, I was like, oh, I should have done this. So I want to go there, but before that, you're in a brand new role, correct?
Yeah, so I have been an experienced director for, gosh, maybe about almost 20 years in the church world.
Yeah,
But recently I transitioned from that, someone kind of overseeing the whole experience from the streets to the seats to the to
yeah,
the screens, to an executive pastor position within the past year. And I'm now at the Life
yeah.
Christian Church in West Orange, New Jersey. It was the next step for me and the next challenge for me to take it on. So excited to jump into that role recently.
So it's interesting because I mean, I really was a very executive creative director at a church, and now I'm here at Vanderbloemen as vice president of marketing. So very similar in shifts, right? How is that shift? Easter was interesting for me because in many regards it was amazing that I didn't have to spend weeks upon weeks ahead of time just heads down and things of that sort. But then on the Easter program, I'm like, oh, I didn't get to do any of that. So it was how has it meant that transition meant for you?
For if you're an adrenaline junkie, you miss it, right? You at least miss that aspect of the adrenaline.
Yeah,
Man,
yeah,
we're doing 12 Easter services. Let's go. But at the end of the day, I think from my perspective, the way I see it, if your church is trying to be culturally relevant, then and trying to connect with your current culture, you need to have a younger guy or gal in that role who's really knees deep in culture, so that they're able to speak the language of the people they're trying to address. I'm watching Disney shows with my daughters at this stage of my life, and so I'm that has passed me on by, and
yeah,
I knew I needed to pass the baton to that next
yeah.
generation, or I would be
That's
doing
huge.
that role a big
Yep.
disservice. Yeah.
That's great. It's funny. One of the last projects that I did, it was for the music team. They were coming out with a new single, and they wanted T-shirts and all that cool stuff. And so my team was young, but I'm not. And so they create this stuff. I'm like, I don't get that, guys. And so then they explain it and show me. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm just not that guy anymore. So I'm going to trust you. They rolled it out. The whole music team loved it, and it was a hit. But yeah, at some point you have to understand that you're just not the guy anymore, and so, you can still lead and things of that sort. But that's exciting. All right, so talk to me about this new idea. And it's kind of funny, honestly, that it is a new idea, because as you rolled it out, I'm like, well, that makes a lot of sense. So talk to me a little bit about what you shared at that church conference of how pastors can do something to increase Sunday.
Yeah, so for me, this is something I kind of stumbled upon halfway through my ministry career, and by no means do I take credit of finding it out myself. I stumbled upon, I was at a church that did this, and I saw the
Hmm,
huge benefit of it in that context, and I've applied it to two different contexts since then. And I say this, and this isn't hyperbole, but I say it's the best ministry advice that I have to offer, doing
yeah,
a
come
message
on.
review, a sermon review, because at the end of the day, it benefits so much things in the organization. So that's how I stumbled upon it, and I've been able to help other churches implement this. And if there's one thing, like for the people who are listening here, executive pastors, lead pastors, team pastors, this is, again, if that doesn't get your ears perked up, the best ministry advice I have to offer, it really is. And it isn't just another thing for you to do it, kind of to check off the list, or
Right.
another means for evaluation. Like there's a lot of evaluation that teaching pastors, lead pastors will go through, but this one actually, when applied, is very life giving. It's very liberating, very releasing, and so like to that end, you give me any mics like this, any soapbox to stand on, and
Yeah.
I'm going to encourage those people in those positions to apply. And like you said, this is beyond sermons, beyond any communicator. If you have
Right.
a presentation, review it. It's going to get so much better, and the impact and the whatever your call to action is going to skyrocket because of that as well.
So give me the practical kind of nuts and bolts. What does this look like?
So in the context that we're talking about, at least what I'm talking about right now, in terms
Yeah.
of a message review or sermon review, is basically, so let me explain what's happening and what's not really working, and then how to modify it. Most
Yeah.
lead pastors, most communicators, they'll spend 10, 15, maybe 20 hours preparing the message and then preaching the message. but
Right.
no one else ever sees it in the course of the week. Maybe their spouse does, but they're never presenting it to someone else for feedback and saying, does this work? Does this not work? And
Right.
you spend sometimes half of your work week with no feedback out whatsoever.
Right.
And that doesn't work for a number of reasons. It's just,
Right.
it's no one speaking into it, making it better. You have no idea if it's landing. And so what I'm saying is take that same amount of time and add a little bit on the back end, 90 minutes to do a review with a couple of people in the room, and you spend 45 minutes preaching your message and then 45 minutes getting feedback. And then after that, apply what you think you can and what you think you should. Not that all the feedback you get needs to be applied, but you take some of that, and then again, it makes things so much better for the guest who's going to receive it and hear it on a Sunday morning. For yourself, gives you the confidence going and that it's going to get better. And then the big thing, you're a Vanderbloemen, you've seen this in terms of staff turnover. It makes a much healthier work environment for everybody you're involved with the message. Maybe it's your graphic
Yeah.
operator, your
Yep.
videographer, people who are helping you make the content. You're not asking them for content Saturday night. You're doing that
Right.
midweek.
Right.
And now they want to be a part of the organization, not for 3 months, but maybe 3 years, or maybe
Right.
13 years. Like
Right.
that
Yeah.
revolving door that we see
Yeah.
spinning so much faster
Huge.
slows down a
Huge.
little bit. So those are just that's some of what it is, and kind of a
Yeah.
couple of the wins.
I
Yeah.
love that. And I mean, because the truth is, a lot of times, if we're really honest, 9 a.m. service is our run through. And then we sit back
Yes.
and go, hey, this didn't land. And hey, just so you know, this actually means this. And 9 o'clock is kind of your test, right? Matter of fact, we used to call back at Victory. We had a Saturday night service, and we called it Saturday Night Raw. And he'd just go off and be like, okay, what are we going to keep of that? What are we not going to keep of that? And I really like the part, because I talked about it at that church conference, about it's now involving your staff in the reason that they came there. They came to be a part of the vision of the church, and in a big part of the vision of the senior pastor. So now for them to have the honor of being a part of what's being preached on Sunday, I can't imagine the level of value that gives. So here at Vanderbloemen,
Yeah.
Monday is one of the busiest times that we will get a senior pastor's resignation. Like, you got to find me I'm out. You got to find a new one. Because Sunday just happened. They thought they put it all out there, and then the negative, right? Well, what about this? And this scripture means that, whatever. How do you protect this kind of a review from some of those things?
Great question. Yeah, I appreciate you pulling back the curtain there, right? And so this even pushes into that these
Yeah.
if you're teaching, you're putting so much of yourself out there on stage, emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, and if it feels like it's a dud, that
Yeah.
potential spiritual high can come crashing down to a spiritual low come Monday. And how do you fix that ebb and flow, that emotional roller coaster week to week, based upon how you performed? Or at least how do you get better and more successful in that batting
Yeah.
average? So,
Yeah.
but to your question, how do you make sure that that doesn't feel like you're being eviscerated? A couple
Right.
things, like real basic, is one of the things I say is to do it with a panel of trusted advisors. So it's got to be a panel. It can't just be
Right.
one person. You want to get multiple people around the room talking to you. I find like 3 to 4 is good. Any less, and you're not getting enough feedback anymore, and it becomes too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
But then the key thing, trusted advisors, right? Faithful are the wounds of a friend. So a friend is going to tell you something, and that stung, but I know it's coming from a friend, and because it's coming from a friend, I know it's to help me and not to hinder me. And at the end of the day, I'm going to have the emotional maturity to receive that from a friend. So that's the biggest thing I say. Get those people that you believe in and believe in you, and then you're going to be a lot more receptive to their feedback. It's interesting when you talk about that. I just want to piggyback on something that Saturday Wild Wild West. I was in a church context where we had 3 services, and we, generally speaking, in terms of the capturing it for the archive's sake, it was first was a little rough, second was good, and then third got a little off again. And it was fun because the lead pastor would always, after the second one, would verify just in terms of the capture. Hey, do we have it in the can? Like, from a production standpoint, audio is good, video is good. Are we fun? Are we good?
We got one safe
one. Yes, we are. And then the interesting thing was, in this little shop talk, he would say for the third service, he said, "Okay, let's have fun." And in his mind,
I love
he's
it.
good. We
That's
captured.
awesome.
And now as a communicator, he's like, I'm gonna go and try some things that I might not normally try, because I know it's archived, and
Right,
and so he did that. But if you do a review, you, in a sense, you get to, it's like a comedian, right? Like, think of like Jerry
right,
Seinfeld. A comedian will work with the material. They're going to work the small clubs before they go to the Netflix
right.
special and record it
Yep,
there. They're
yep,
working out content. So the review allows you to do that. It allows you to try out content and say, did that work? You're like, no, that was a
yeah,
dud. Okay, I'm taking that out of my routine. That's not going to be in my stand-up special anymore. The review
right.
gives you all that
Yeah,
opportunity.
that's
So
fantastic.
other tradesmen and other tradeswomen do the same principle, and they're, just, and for some reason Christians don't do it. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, being in the creative and marketing side, I don't just create stuff and put it out there. I just create it. Look, hey, team, what do you think? Let's get input, because there's going to sometimes they just see stuff that I just don't see. Like, wow, I had no idea that meant that, or that would make you feel that way, or whatever. So I there's definitely, but I think it's so critical to get that circle of people around you,
Hmm.
that one you can trust, but two can also be honest. I mean, because there's I trust them. Well, do you trust that they're not going to say anything, or do you trust that they're going to be honest but fair and gentle and all that kind of stuff at the same time? That's good. So
Yeah, I'm going to
go ahead.
piggyback on.
Yeah,
Well, it's interesting, right? We sometimes we over spiritualize the message, and like, God has told this to me to tell this to you. But
right.
at the end of the day, it's also an artistic form. And just as you as an artist, if you're talking about like artistic content that you're working on,
Right.
you would get feedback on that before you
Yeah.
released it to the world. To the same degree, a presentation, a speech, a sermon, a monologue is an
Yeah.
artistic expression. And so from the craft standpoint, are we letting people speak into it? That's a fascinating comparison where we usually don't
Yeah.
do that with the
Yeah.
message.
So obviously, any senior pastor that's listening to this, they're like, yeah, that's a good idea, and they can implement it. But others, your exec pastors, your creative pastors, things of that sort, they're going to have to bring this to the senior pastor. How have you seen them bring this in a way that the
Mm.
senior pastor can grab hold of and go, you know what? Yeah, let's give this a try.
Uh, yeah, kind of, what's in it for me? Why should I, how do you
Yeah.
appeal
Yeah.
to someone
Yeah.
else's self-interest? Yes, you got to do that. The first thing I would say is let them know they're going to have a weekend. So if they are able to apply this, what it forces them to do most, we've talked shop a little bit before. A lot of those
Yeah.
those sites where you download sermon illustrations,
Yeah.
their
Yep.
their peak traffic is Saturday night, because communicators are
Hey, I
waiting
got
to
an
the
idea.
very end
Yeah. Yeah.
to download that content. But if you take your work week and you just flip it and you put all your meetings in the back end, you do some prep at the beginning. Well, guess what? You're done with the sermon prep, and you can review it midweek, a Wednesday or a Thursday, maybe even
Yeah.
a Friday, and then you walk away from it knowing it's good to go. And then you actually have a weekend instead of, I've done it myself. I'll say this, I'm not a teaching pastor. It's maybe a secondary, or more honestly, maybe a tertiary gift of mine. I can
Yeah.
get up and do it, but it's my strength.
Right.
But when I'm doing that, if I'm prepping Thursday, Friday, Saturday, well, the whole weekend, even if I'm with my kids, it's in the back
Yeah.
of my mind. I still got to get that illustration for point three. How am I bridging that second state? I'm doing all that stuff instead of actually being present with my family on a Sabbath. So,
Yeah.
what's in it for them? It gives you a break. And even if you don't have a family, even you're single guy,
Yeah.
you're a single gal, you have margin in your life. You have professional
Yeah.
margin, you have personal margin, and look at the burnout rate. It's going to keep you in
Yeah.
the game longer.
Right.
So
Yeah.
do it for yourself before you do it for anyone else.
Yeah. It's interesting. A whole byproduct of this could just be a better, healthy rhythm, which,
Hmm.
I mean, I tell you, one of the benefits of not working for a church right now is my weekend is kind of my weekend. There's stuff, there's little things here and there, but for the most part, I'm not being pulled to and fro. So I mean, that's, and sure, you're still going to have Sunday, but man, imagine a pastor having all Saturday to actually be present with whatever, go to the pool, take a bike ride, whatever, go to your kid's game that's on a Saturday, things of that sort. That's huge. I didn't even think about that being maybe even more of a valuable asset that you're gaining from this than the sermon itself. That's really, really good.
Hmm.
So once this is in, I also imagine, just thinking back through the process, this isn't a checklist. Okay, pastor, here are the things that you need to do and you must do them. This is feedback, right? I mean, and it's pastor's going to take some of it and not take some of it. Have you experienced that circle of trusted advisors sometimes feeling like, why did you still do this? Or why didn't you do this? I thought I said we should do this, right? I mean, I can see that.
Yes, so this is great. This is a two-way street. It takes humility.
Yeah,
We're kind of speaking around. It takes humility on the lead pastor's part, the
yeah,
teaching pastor, to say, I'm going to open myself up and you're going to give me feedback to get better. But then it also
yeah.
takes vulnerability on the panel, where I've seen some panel members where they can get dogged on their idea. No, no, no. You really have to switch the order between point three and point three. The flows can, and they oversell their case, or the next time during the review, I saw that you didn't take my suggestion, and why was that? And they are
Right.
thin-skinned, and so
Yeah,
yes, that
yeah.
humility and that vulnerability needs to go both ways. And then the other thing too, in terms of what I tell lead pastors to structure this well, is like, think dictatorship, not democracy. Like you're
Mm,
getting suggestions from a panel.
yeah,
You may
yeah.
apply 1 of 10. You may apply 10 of 10. That's up to you. And that lets them know that it's a suggestion. It's not a mandate they're giving to you. Sometimes
Yeah,
you can let the wrong person in the room and they take
yeah,
over, or
yeah,
you feel handcuffed to their feedback. And
yeah.
so just remind them, hey, that's going to be a benevolent dictatorship. I'm the dictator here, and it's not
Mm.
a democracy. We don't have an equal vote on this
We're not
stuff.
gonna
And that,
we're not
again,
gonna vote
that
for
puts
point
the
three, right? Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
like that. Yeah,
Let's all vote on that.
yeah,
That puts the lead pastor in the driver's seat and makes sure
yeah,
that they're comfortable with the process.
yeah. And it's still it helps because you might be nudging here and there, but it's also still very respectful and honoring of that pastor and of the work that they put into this message. Because there's a lot of heart in that. It's just like my designers would. I mean, I this is your work, and so when I say I don't like it, you might hear I don't like you, but that's not what I said. I said
Mm.
I don't like this. So it's definitely your work, that sermon, that thing you're about to speak to everybody. It's personal to you, like when I spoke at that
Mhm.
church, that was personal to me. It's, I got to tell my story and what I've learned and all that. So it's about being a part of that, but also protecting it, but also making it the best it can be at the same time. That's great. I love
Yeah,
it.
and any artist is, yeah, it's going to be personal because it's your art, but any artist wants to grow their craft and get better
Yeah,
at it. And so,
yeah,
from that vantage point, yeah, you're going to take a couple hits on it, but you're going to get much better at your craft.
right.
And that, instead of like kind of like that slow, most communicators, it's a kind of slow burn, right? Like over 20 years, they get
Yep.
better. If you're a
Yeah,
young teaching pastor, you implement this and you can gain like 20 years of feedback that it would normally take you 20
sure.
years to get. So like, just,
Yeah.
I think of, younger communicators who would potentially be applying this. You're going to, you're going to accelerate your growth as a communicator so much faster with this process.
That's interesting because you've got that end where the younger communicator is increasing and the older is now polishing it because, well, they've probably done that sermon a couple of times, right? If they're talking
Mhm.
about tithing, not their first time they've talked about. So it's how can the truth is still the truth, but what can I do to shine it up a little bit? Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's great. Well, Ben, thank you so much. I love this advice. I'm hoping for those that you are listening and got this message. If you put this into practice, please reach out. Let me know. We'll connect you to Ben as well if you need further. Like, hey, we need someone to help us strategize all this, or we need more information of it. Contact us. I'd love to hear your story of how this has worked out for you. Send us some even before and afters, things of that sort. I would love to hear how this has taken Sunday or whatever communicating that you're doing to that new level, and really taking that heart again and making it the best it can possibly be. Ben, thank you so much. It's so good to see you again, and I hope our paths continue to run across each other.
Michael, thank you for having me. Appreciate what you're doing. Appreciate what Vanderbloemen is doing and how you're equipping people in the trenches of ministry like myself.
Thanks, dude. All right. I will stop.